Ms. Jones, are you around?
Good afternoon, Chair.
You are around. And please confirm if we can go ahead.
1 more minute to go, Chair, but we are a quorum.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Noma French Mbombo. I'm the chair of the Western Cape Mobility Standing Committee. Welcome to the Western Cape Provincial Parliament Committee. The purpose of this attendance, this meeting, is about the status of the Public Transport Network Grant, PTNG. That's what we'll be calling throughout. And we want to welcome the National Department of Transport for giving us this opportunity. We know that we have been keep on postponing, and initially we were wanted them to accompany us to some of these projects, specifically in the city, but unfortunately we won't be able to do so. The time we have for this engagement, which is virtually, is 2 hours. So indulge with me so that we could be able to make this effective. So before my colleagues can introduce themselves, which is each or everyone will introduce themselves. For the visitors, national transport, can I just get a confirmation, Ms. Jones, that we don't have a politician, it's only the officials. That's the list that I have, just to make sure. So what's going to happen is we'll start with the national, where the head of the delegation will introduce herself. The last time, according to my list, we had an acting DDG. The acting DDG will just indicate that he has got maybe 4 or 5 of officials with, but the person who will be presenting is so-and-so. And then so that when so-and-so starts presenting, then we know. With the City of Cape Town, I also want to welcome, according to my list, we do have the MMC for mobility, Mr. Rob Quintus. In that case, Mr. Quintus will introduce himself and then indicate that he's with Executive Director, if there's Executive Director, who will then say that the person who will be presenting is so-and-so and has got so many with. And similar with, we've got also George. According to my list, they're supposed to be the mayor of George. And from the mayor of George, you'll indicate, and the mayor of George so-and-so, and with whether MM or executive director who can introduce the person that will be presenting. Otherwise, if we could have all, because there are more than 20 in my list that are here, we'll end up not being able to make that time full. So before we engage, let's allow the members of the committee to introduce themselves. I am with Ms. Jones, who is acting for Ms. Adams in this regard. Thank you very much. Over to you, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Professor Mbombo. My name is, and also good afternoon to the members of the National Department of Transport. My name is Benson Lenzu, the member of this standing committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair. I'm Leon van Wyk, a member of this committee, and good afternoon to everyone on the platform.
Good afternoon, Chair. Brett Heron, member of the committee.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon, the Department of Transport International, and good afternoon to the City of Cape Town, MMC, Robert Quintus, and all the officials present. My name is Nogo Masipa. I'm a member of this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to all the visitors. I am a member of this committee. Thank you.
Member Heron, we're starting to introduce. That's all.
Beg your pardon, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. To the department, I'm not sure it's gonna be the acting DDG, whoever is the head of the delegation. You can just again introduce yourself and then indicate how many of you, and then you mention the name of the person who will be doing the introduction. This one to over to you to the national.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. It's Kibi Manana from the National Department of Transport. Can I request that I keep the camera off because of connectivity, if that's possible? I'm accompanied by colleagues from the Department of Transport. I have Mr. Bonile Malila and Mr. Ibrahim Sidat, Ms. Amanda Gibbet, as well as Mr. Oscar Tobela. And I will be making the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. City member, MMC Quintus.
Thank you, Chairperson. Am I audible? Honourable Mbobo,
Yes,
am
you're
I
on.
audible? Yes, thank you very much. So very good morning to you, Chairperson, and thank you for the arranging of this sitting and the inclusion of the City of Cape Town in this discussion and presentation by the National Department of Transport. I am, for those who are not so familiar with me, I am Councillor Rob Quintus, MMC for Urban Mobility in the City of Cape Town. And I'm joined on this call through the extended invitation by my Executive Director for Urban Mobility, Mr. Regan Melody. I'm also joined by our Director for Transport Planning and Network Management, Mr. Neil Slingers, and our Director for Public Transport, which is Mr. Harold Peters, and then finally Ms. Caitlin Montague, my Executive Support Officer from my office, is also joining us online from the city. I don't believe I've missed anyone. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. So the person who will be presenting, will be able to introduce yourself then at the time that's going to begin the presentation. Thank you, Mayor of George.
Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon, MPLs and fellow colleagues in local government. Yes, I'm Brown Johnson. I'm the Executive Mayor of George. Today, together with me is Rian du Plessis. He is the CFO at George and also the Deputy Director, Kurt Paulser, under Legal Services, has joined me. Just an apology from the Acting Municipal Manager, Mr. Bevan Elman. Chair, thank you very much for the invite. I think it's quite an important topic in a discussion that we need to have since we know the effect that this grant will have on the Go George bus services in George. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. just for rules of engagement, all members need to be muted at the beginning of the meeting to avoid background noises. Members to flag points of order in the chat function or using the MS Teams. All video and audio must be switched off. Ms. Manana, you are fine to improve the quality of the connection. However, when you are speaking, if possible, you can just show us for the first time, just so that we can be able to see how your person is presenting. Participants must switch off their mics once they have finished. Just quickly how it's going to be so that we could be able to make use of this time. At the maximum of 30 minutes, we are providing to the national to present. And then we give a maximum of 15 minutes each. When I'm saying maximum, it doesn't have to, you have to use all the amount. So it means that the whole of the presentation from the national and the response from the judge and the proposal from the city, from the judge is 15 minutes each, which gives us 1 hour. And then we'll have 45 minutes of engagements in terms of the questions, because we need the last 15 minutes for the committee. So over to you, Ms. Manana, for the presentation. I am switching off also my camera. Thank you very much. Are you going to flight it from your side? We did receive the presentation, but it will help if probably you could flight it from your side.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and flight it on my side. Okay. Okay, so thank you again to the committee for inviting us to make a presentation. I think from our side, we will touch on a number of issues. Our presentation will largely focus on the winding down of the PTNG. I'm just struggling to go to the slide and to move it. I'm not sure why. It has stopped sharing, or is it still showing?
It's still showing, I can see from my side.
Okay, on my screen share, it's stopped. It's just showing the screen of everyone who's in the meeting. May I request that maybe if the secretariat from your side can share it, it would help. Let me stop sharing.
Ms. Jones, can you be able to share it? Because let me see if I. Okay, is that yours? The one that is now on black?
Yes, it is. No, it's not me. I think it's the secretary.
That's me trying to share, Chair.
Oh, okay.
I just want to put it in.
Presentation is off. So our focus will be on the winding down, the reasons for the winding down, the process that we are currently, implementing for the wind down, and I think lastly we'll just give a sense of the future. So the department has consistently urged municipalities to implement faster and better, and because we meet with municipalities on a regular basis, either on a bilateral basis or in a cities forum, And the message has been consistent that we need to implement better and faster. And despite also the support and oversight that we give to the cities and on the ground, we've had limited successes in the sense that we are still not moving the number of passengers that we were supposed to have been moving by now, firstly. And secondly, we're supposed to have also completed in terms of the scope of the project at municipal level. Not all municipalities are now, at out of the pilot phase. Most of them are still implementing, the phase 1 pilot phase. And we've had cities missing deadlines. Cities would come up with their own deadlines and miss those deadlines. Funds have been wasted, and we've even had a number of forensic investigations. And cities have failed to improve their performance, despite most cities, maybe not all of them, but all cities have delayed. I think that applies to even the Western Cape municipalities. And now a decision had to be made, and it was a tough decision to, continue with this grant or not. Chair, there is a hand up. I'm not sure if I should continue.
Over to you, Member Manju.
Yeah,
So you're speaking, sorry, Member Manju. Ms. Jones is still not reflecting.
Oh, I thought it was actually reflecting. Let me just see. Is it showing?
Yeah, it's better now. Okay, thanks. Member Manju?
No, thanks. I don't want to wait for, Ms. Manana to conclude. Well, I read the document, but there is, as she's presenting, whilst the presentation covers maybe all cities in the country, can she attempt to also, in a way, locate the city of Cape Town and George, in the specific in the context of her presentation. For instance, in the context of her presentation, so that at least one can be able to locate and properly plan for questions and comments post-presentation. Can you try?
Thank you very much. Is that possible, Ms. Manana?
Chair, that will be difficult because in your request, we were not requested to focus on the Western Cape municipalities only. And this is a presentation that we gave to the Portfolio Committee where we touched on all municipalities. So I think if there are questions that are related to the 2 municipalities, we can note them and provide responses afterwards. Thank you, Chair.
So you mean during the presentation? When you say afterwards, you mean?
After the meeting, Chair, after the meeting.
But I can understand the concern from Ms. Menzo because we said the status of public transport network grant in the Western Cape. Hence, the city asked for a response from their side, and also that it was extended to George as well because it impacts on them. But probably what you could. Yes, you did. So I've muted the person. So probably what you could do, can you please probably try to make it maybe faster for the other parts, and then so that we could be able to see. How long are you going to take?
We'll try and be as fast as we can.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Can you please, the IT please mute the IT? Can you please mute those people who are making noise? Over to you, Ms. Manana.
Okay, can we go to the next slide, ma'am? Next one. In focusing on the reasons for the wind down, we'll just indicate the state of performance across all cities. Most municipalities are underperforming and have shown a poor return on investment. And the program is currently implemented in 11 municipalities, with 9 municipalities combined moving about 42 million passengers and at 152,000 average weekday passenger trips being made. And the services are operating daily. And the 2 municipalities that are not yet operational are eThekwini and Msundizi. And most systems, as I said, it's still on a pilot scale. And I think what is important is to note that taxis are moving 8 million daily passenger trips. Next slide. In comparison to IPTNs moving 42 million, or rather 152 million, 152,000 average trips. We've had persistent structural challenges, across the program, and this has led to the decision to wind down the grant. The first issue around municipal capacity, cities lack the capability to plan and manage and operate these systems. Industry transition, I think this is one challenge that cuts across all municipalities, including Cape Town and George, where they have all had difficulties with engaging with the industry. And there have been some challenges with regard to vehicle operating companies. The issue around financial sustainability has this one as well cuts across all municipalities, where costs exceed revenue. And when you look at the amount of money that has been spent, close to about 88 billion rands, and yet the amount of, or the number of passengers we're moving, that then indicates that we have not really received value for money. I think most cities tend to focus quite a lot on infrastructure, and that has resulted in an over-designed system where it's purely, driven by infrastructure, and sometimes that infrastructure being poorly utilized. And lastly, the issue around governance and compliance, where there's weak enforcement as well as non-compliance with some of the grant conditions. And these issues cut across most of the cities. And the following slides, can we go to the next slide? We are unpacking them in detail. Firstly, the issue around local municipality capacity constraints. I've indicated that most municipalities don't have that capability. There's an excessive reliance on PMUs. And you also find that even when there is capacity, the issue around institutional memory is a challenge, because you then have you get new people coming in who don't have the institutional memory of where the project started. For example, in Cape Town, where by now we're supposed to be moving between 200 and 300,000 passenger numbers, and yet we are only at 60,000. And these targets would have been developed by past teams, and committed to deliver. And then also industry transition challenges, where I think this one, there's fragmentation within the taxi industry and infighting. This then impacts on the project itself, and there are also prolonged and difficult negotiations with the industry. And VOCs are also not fully capacitated. Affordability, mismanagement and misuse of funds, I've touched on this. And also you find that there's also lack of adherence to the minimum mandated rates base in most municipalities. I guess Cape Town and George are meeting this 4% or is it 2% requirement from their rates base. And infrastructure is also over-designed. There's also poor infrastructure contract management, or even just maintenance of that infrastructure. Can we move to the next slide? Institutional issues, where there's poor planning and governance, and there's uneven implementation will, and an even commitment to operationalize. And lastly, the issue around compliance and consequence management, where conditions are not complied with, and then the department has had to even suspend 3 municipalities as a result. Next slide. So overall, the reasons for winding down has been misalignment between expenditure and outcomes, as I've said, where we've spent 88 billion and we're only moving 152,000 passengers. And there's fragmented funding architecture, where you've got certain funding streams located at provincial level and others at the municipal level. The overemphasis on capital versus operations, capacity constraints, as well as long-term financial costs with poor returns. Next slide. As we implement the wind down process, I think there is an acceptance that we need to implement it in a considered way and manage the process carefully. It is important that we do not, as we implement wind down, that we do not lead to undesired consequences. That the intention of the wind down is to make sure that we save money and display fiscal prudence, that we reduce waste, and therefore also redirect resources to effective frameworks that we will come up with, and that also we do not want, in terms of undesired. We are mindful that public transport contributes to the economy, and therefore we to damage the GDP. We do not want to, systems that are working properly, where passengers are depending on them. We are mindful that there are control and legal obligations, and these must be honored. And we also recognize that, when you wind down a grant in the manner that this has happened, this will erode trust from both, other spheres of government as well as the industry, whether it be the minibus taxi industry as well as the bus industry. And lastly, that we do not want in next slide. We've identified some of the risks in the wind down process and the mitigation measures that we will implement. For example, service continuity. I think it's important that we are committed to make sure that there should be minimum or no disruption of services during the wind down process. And therefore, it would be critical for us as we wind down and we move to the new grant to have a very clear phase transition plan to make sure that we protect the services that are there and those core corridors. That infrastructure and assets, we must avoid them being unused or stranded, and therefore use them and align them to the new services as well as the remaining services. Intergovernmental coordination critical is one of the success factors in managing this wind down, and also even in come up with, and therefore there mustn't be any misalignment across the three spheres. It will be important to continue engaging and communicating and clarifying roles and formalize this coordination. And also we are mindful that outside of the wind down, as we transition to the new plan and the new grant, we must avoid any risks that will impact on or will undermine the reform that we want to bring in. And even during the wind down, that process doesn't undermine the new reform. And therefore, it's important that we manage the transition, and funding certainty is critical. And I think this is the good thing is Treasury is part of this process. We've had a number of engagements coming out of a workshop that we had with Treasury last week, where we are in discussions to ensure that we are on the same page and that we manage this transition quite well, and also that we must communicate and sing from the same hymn book. And therefore, from their side as well, it's important that they indicate and send the signals in terms of funding that will be available beyond the wind down, and also to make sure that we don't have a fiscal mismatch where commitments exceed funding, and therefore it's important that cities will need to then present to us what we call their wind down plans, and those will be there will then be a negotiation and engagement on those plans to make sure that there is alignment and that there is funding available for those. And I think it's important. Can we go to the next slide? We also indicate that Minister is from our side. It's critical that we also indicate that Minister is committed to this process, and in the portfolio committee she did indicate that we're not going to be disrupting any services, and that we will be meeting all legal or valid obligations. We started communicating with cities in August already, even though this timeline just reflects that there was communication from the 8th of October. In August already, we had a meeting in Pretoria with municipalities where they were informed of the looming 30% cut of the grant. And we continue to communicate with them. I will not go into much discussion here. And I think now in June, we will be engaging with cities bilaterally, where we will then talk about the legal obligations they have and the winding down commitments that they may have. Next slide. The transition process in terms of the winding down, in the next 2 years, the focus is going to be on the winding down of the grant, where the funding will be reduced, and in the third year, 28 to 29, we will then start to develop a new fund. Already we have started with the plan. And also what this fund should look like. I think we're allowing ourselves the third year to then finalize this fund in terms of the framework that then can be shared with municipalities and provinces to then engage on. And at year 3, it's important that we highlight that this is where we will start to consolidate the different funding streams. The PTOC, that is at a provincial level, the PTNG, which is at municipal level, as well as the TRP program. They will then be consolidated into one fund. This slide just highlights the process that will be followed as we wind down the PTNG, the different steps that will be undertaken, where we assess contractual obligations, we assess VOC arrangements, and this then ends up with a plan that then is agreed upon with each city. And during this transition, I think the objectives that will guide this process is that we will make sure that we protect essential mobility, and also make sure that the system performance and ridership is not impacted negatively, and look at contractual exposure. And lastly, the slide just highlights the roles that the department will play, as well as the municipality. Next slide. In terms of understanding the contractual obligations, cities have submitted contractual obligations, and it's important that we highlight that we still are verifying and confirming these amounts to make sure that they are also in line with the conditions of the grant. But as you can see, in 25-26, the contractual obligation to 5.3 billion, and in 2026-27, 5.8, and then also the third year of the MTEF, it's 4.4 billion, with a contractual obligations amounting to about 17 billion beyond the MTF. And these are largely, go to the next slide, these are largely due to contracts that are long-term, and most of those contracts would be the VOC contracts that municipalities enter into with operators, and some of those contracts also touch on AFC systems. I think the city that's most affected is Cape Town, because they've got BFI and they are constructing with the BFI. And so those the obligations then or contractual commitments are beyond the MTEF period. This slide also just gives the value of the different contracts across the municipalities. We'll go to the next slide. And towards the future, I think, the new model that we're currently looking at is the phasing out of multiple grants, as I said, where this results in overlapping services, and then you also have fragmented services that are funded by both PTOG as well as PTNG. And we want to move into a single public transport fund with a unified set of standards that then funds road-based public transport. We are moving from a heavy infrastructure focus into more operations-led service reform. And also we're moving away from compensation-led approaches to make sure that we come up with networks that explore other models of for MBT transformation rather than only focusing on compensation. And then lastly, we are moving away from the taxi recap program into what we call repurposing the funds from the taxi recap to de-risk the industry. And this will look at driving formalization, making sure that within the MBT industry, there is operating license compliance, and that they also have access to funds that will make the vehicle more affordable. This is the stakeholder engagement process that is underway. We are indicating that we've had a public transport funding workshop with provinces and municipalities. We're coming out of a bilateral with Treasury, and there will still be some follow-up discussions with Treasury. And this should then be followed by another engagement with provinces and municipalities. And we will also then engage with industry, and this will then end up with a cabinet submission of the new plan with the new fund. Last slide. I think the last slide gives a summary of the steps that will be followed, that currently we have to validate and finalize contractual exposure across all cities. And we will then, with every city, there will be a wind down plan developed, and we will then confirm funding based on the current funding envelope that is there. And if there are shortfalls, Treasury will then be informed to make sure that those commitments are met. And then we then need to look at how we stabilize the services that are there, resulting in finally when the plan and the fund has been approved by cabinet, that then we will finalize that and then transit into the new regime with the new reforms. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. Thank you, Chairperson and members of the committee.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Over to the city. Sorry, I forgot to ask the Provincial Mobility Department to introduce themselves. Probably just a quick one whilst the city is preparing for their slides. The acting HOD, Ms. D, can you please just introduce yourself and just indicate how many of you, of officials, are with you whilst the city is preparing for the response?
Thank you, Chairperson. Through you, I've represented here by contacts management team as well as our policy section.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Apology for not mentioning you. Over to the city. Alderman Quintus.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to switch camera off shortly. Just briefly, I have sent a presentation a little while ago to Zahida Adams. However, if she's not on the call, Director Harold Peters will present, and I'll go through the presentation with yourselves. If Zahida is unable to load it, then if Director Harold Peters can be given permission to present, it would be appreciated. Please, Chairperson.
Ms. Johnson, you take this out. Minimize this one for national. I'm not sure you have the city one.
Chairperson, if there's a struggle from Ms. Adams's side, if Director Harold Peters, who's on the call, could be given permission to present, it would be appreciated. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Over to the ED.
Sorry, Chair. I'm unable to assist there.
Oh,
I
there
just
you are.
realized I don't know.
There we go. That's
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. I don't know if you're going to maximize the screen. Thank you, Ms. Adams. I think it is that is doing this for me. So I'm going to, with your indulgence, Chairperson, just very briefly go through a presentation which was presented to the National Department of Transport conference that I attended in, I think, March this year. And then I will just, with your indulgence, speak to some of the items that the previous presenter mentioned, and then confirm verbally the city's position on where the PTNG stands currently. But I just want to create a landscape idea of what the city has been doing with our public transport network grant funding over time. So on the first slide, you'll see the Somerset West public transport interchange, which services minibus taxis, as well as Golden Arrow bus services. You know, the construction of this fantastic landmark infrastructure is part of what we have been doing. If we can move to the next slide, please. Also, the My City Station in Khayelitsha Township, which is also maintained to an unbelievable standard through PTNG funding, which is allocated for our PTNGs and My City Stations maintenance programs. This anecdotally, Chairperson, has become a place in Khayelitsha where young lovers take their future wives to go and propose to them in a picnic setting. And this is at the large PTI in Khayelitsha at Kuyasa near the Praza station as well. Next slide, please. Chairperson, the bus rapid transport lanes, which are under construction currently with our phase 2A component of the My City project, or the Southeast Corridor expansion, is a mega public transport project made possible through both BFI and PTNG funding. That funding is for infrastructure, and then also we had anticipated until the phasing out of the PTNG was tabled as it's a discussion by the National Department of Transport, that along with the sort of 4.2% of the rate space that goes towards the operations of My City in the city of Cape Town, that the public transport network grant would also assist in the funding towards the operations, and then of course importantly the procurement of fleet for both the new extension and our current phase 1 network. Next slide, please. So, all familiar sites of what we have done so far with our over the many years of the bus rapid transport program in the city of Cape Town, showing a delivery of the mandates that we have been given by National Department of Transport and the utilization of their grant funding, Madam Chairperson. Next slide, please. So My City today, as mentioned, we're looking at about 65,000 passenger journeys per weekday, and that equates to roughly 2.3 million passenger trips per month. And our current statistics, because we have recovered past the COVID recovery and exceeded, is now roughly over 20 million passenger trips per year, undertaken in the city of Cape Town by passengers on My City alone. So that's 20 million trips per year that are now left in some uncertainty around the operations of our service, aside from the contribution of the rate space. And, you know, it equates, Madam Chairperson, to approximately just over 40% of the national average of bus trips are taken by My City in Cape Town in terms of BRT. Next slide, please. So our fleet currently comprises 347 buses in the existing fleet, with 90% of that fleet operational at any given time. Next slide, please. The current network comprises 42 stations across our CBD and surrounds, our Atlantic seaboard, which goes from Hot Bay to Sea Point via Camps Bay to the Civic Centre in Cape Town, our West Coast route from Tableview to Atlantis from the Civic Centre via Century City as well, and our new N2 Express, which resumed in the first year of my executive administration. We resumed the service, which of course runs from Mitchell's Plain and Khayelitsha to the CBD and then and back again. Next slide, please. So the next frontier is our My City Phase 2A. So that new infrastructure we are building, Chairperson, which includes the red concrete roads and stations, is going to connect an additional 1.4 million residents who live across about 34 suburbs in the city of Cape Town to the My City network. So in addition to the 20 million plus trips annually on My City, there's going to be an additional quotient of trips coming in from those additional 1.4 million residents who stand to benefit from the service, which is earmarked, as we all know, for the Cape Flats into Wynberg and Claremont, and is going to service, amongst others, Philippi, Khayelitsha, Mitchell's Plain, Hanover Park, Guguletu, Athlone, Wynberg and Claremont. Many of the commuters in that region are spending a tremendous amount of money on taxis. And as we know, after rail, My City is the most affordable form of public transport for the regular monthly user. Many of them are traveling more than 20 kilometers per day. And there has been no direct east-west public transport corridor, which is what we are providing with this project, which is both funded by BFI and PTNG. Many of the people that are living in those areas have to come from the southern suburbs, have to come from the CBD to the southern suburbs. This now takes that entire logistical nightmare out of the system for them and provides both dedicated and in-traffic lanes for easy movement, both affordably, reliably, and safely. Next slide, please. So the direct scheduled corridor, as I said, is going to comprise 11 closed bus stations, which are planned, 17.4 kilometers of dedicated bus rapid transport lanes, our red lanes, which are under construction already, and a total of 22.4 kilometers of roads being constructed specifically for the service, and they are currently under construction. The two new bus depots have been completed along Spine Road and Khayelitsha, one to service the Mitchell's Plain components and leg, and the other the Khayelitsha leg. As I mentioned earlier, this all brings 30 neighborhoods, more than 30 neighborhoods, and 1.4 million residents online to our network by July 2027 and into the into financial year 2028. Next slide, please. The Hanover Park, which we are hoping to have practical completion by the end of this year, hopefully, which provides dedicated My City use out of mixed traffic and allows for the vehicles to come up onto the elevated Sky Circle, change direction accordingly, and continue on a rapid bus transport trip to where people need to get to. Next slide, please. The concepts have been approved for all of our stations, contracts have been awarded, and construction is underway with the majority of these, also scheduled to be completed around 2027 and into the 2028, between the 2027 and 28 financial year. Next slide, please. So this is an idea of what we are bringing into Mitchell's Plain, renderings of dignity and the lanes which are under construction, how they will appear once completed, adding value, dignity, and ease of use to residents across that entire southeast corridor of the city. Next slide, please. And that's it from our side in terms of presentation. If I may, Madam Chairperson, just to respond to some items from the previous speaker, I think it's been, mention was made that the municipalities are incapable or unable to implement and plan for and deliver on large projects. I think the presentation speaks to the fact that the City of Cape Town certainly has delivered on many of the milestones already on this current project, and of course in the previous phase 1 as well. In terms of industry transition, the My City Vehicle Operating Company and Industry Transition program in Cape Town has been largely incredibly successful. I do always feel for our colleagues in the public transport sector, being Golden Arrow bus services, who often get targeted during times of unrest, and particularly in the minibus industry. However, My City, touch wood, is almost exempt from this because of our successful modeling of the vehicle operating company to include the minibus taxi industry, to have them brought in as stakeholders and partners in our route operations, and that there is a skills transfer through the other partners, whether they be Kidrigan or Golden Arrow or Transpeninsula or any of the other large passenger bus services that we take on for the maintenance of our fleet and for the direct operations. This partnership between the city passenger bus companies and taxi associations has been largely successful, and we are in the midst currently of negotiating for renewals of phase 1 and for the new phase 2 projects of My City. And without certainty around some form of funding to replace PT&G, we are naturally quite nervous. Public transport, there was a mention by the previous speaker that it doesn't always sort of break even, so to speak. Madam Chairperson, I don't think I need to remind you or your portfolio that public transport globally, with the exception of 1 or 2 Southeast Asian city-states, is a subsidized service. It is a public benefit. It requires subsidy from government, and the modern, most recent transport economics globally speak to a 1 to 4, 1 to 5 return on investment. So every pound, rand, dollar that is invested in public transport sees a growth or return of 4 or 5 rand, pound, or dollars into the economy. On that though, I think I would just like to also mention that something we've started already, Madam Chairperson, which I'm sure you're well aware of, is that My City now can have its points loaded online and saves many people the inconvenience of needing to go and get points loaded at our kiosks or stations. This, of course, is going to increase the amounts of, if I may use this vulgar term, but I always appreciate it, bums on seats in terms of operations, which is what the PT&G wants to focus on in the future, or this new fund. And by having a convenient system where people are able to top up online, which is now already in play with My City, is going to increase that ridership and usership. Furthermore, we will be piloting in July, August, our first tap bank card, tap on, tap off, with our with the route 1 or 2 routes in our existing phase 1 network. This is going to also be a terrific game changer for that ad hoc user who does not need or want a card loaded with points to be able to just conveniently use their phone or their bank card to tap on or tap off. Madam Chairperson, in closing, I just want to say that we, in effect, as a city, we actually support a shift, the shift by the National Department of Transport and Treasury from a capital-rich and heavy program to a we support the winding down of the PT&G in regards to the capital-rich and capital-heavy infrastructure-based programs. However, it must be said that it cannot be a blanket uniform approach that all municipalities, those who do operate some bus services, those who operate no bus services, and those who are operating 20 million trips per year, are all marked with the same assessment. It cannot be that we put those 20 million plus trips per year at risk with the winding down as a result of the PT&G not being put to the correct use or appropriate outcomes in other municipalities. So the reform must reward performance, Chairperson. It must protect commitments and provide some funding certainty. We are fully aligned with the shift to performance-based funding. We also believe and agree on the focus on viable transport services, supporting systems that do deliver real mobility outcomes. And we support the reform of current grant structures, moving beyond a fragmented PT&G and PTOG arrangement. We also support the review of non-performing projects, and the provided operational and implementation-ready systems are protected. In other words, those that work, let them keep working with support. Those that are not working, then there should be a fairly straightforward approach to cutting those that are not providing a service or benefit to commuters. Our concerns, Madam Chairperson, are largely that there is a one-size-fits-all transition approach here, which I've mentioned already. We cannot see 20.2 million annual passenger journeys. In fact, we're looking at actually maybe 29 million trips once we finalize our numbers being put at risk. It's diametrically opposed to what public transport should be about. The lack of funding certainty is a primary concern, because in the absence of a credible multi-year funding path, immediate decisions are required on what is going to happen with the Phase 2A rollout, what is going to happen with the Phase 1 Stage 2 funding commitments, what is going to happen with our taxi compensation and industry inclusion, what is going to happen with our fleet and systems procurement, what is going to happen with our contractual obligations in terms of our facilities, our automatic fare collection, and others. General assurances, Madam Chairperson, and respectfully to the National Department of Transport, are insufficient. There is a critical gap in terms of the PTNG wind-down plan, which has not been provided in the draft plans that we have seen from the National Department of Transport. No response to date has been to our queries has come, despite asking for it, and this prevents a proper assessment of transition implications, and it must be shared for meaningful engagement. There's unclear definition of what the commitments will be. There's risk that only signed contracts are recognized. This excludes projects that are under construction in my city currently, and those implementation-ready phases, and it creates great uncertainty for Phase 2A in particular. We can't look at Phase 2A as an unlaunched or a not new project. It is almost complete. And commitments have been made over years to those 34 neighborhoods, and those 1.4 million would be my city commuters, that the service is coming for them to enable them to save money and have a reliable service going forward. In terms of the taxi compensation policy risk, Madam Chairperson, I mentioned earlier that we have a good relationship with the minibus taxi industry in Cape Town. I know it's not the same in other parts of the country. Our relationship, by and large, is a very good one. But by having uncertainty around how we're supposed to negotiate these contracts going forward is going to provide risk that we have not really experienced in Cape Town up until this possibility. And synopsis and closing. Service contraction, stranded infrastructure that might be left unfinished, financial and compliance exposure through unfunded commitments and procurement risks, industry instability, and policy credibility risk are all of those big risks that we need to table and that we need to have addressed with some certainty as to what type of grant funding mechanism is going to be put in place if PTNG is wound down to ensure that those cities that are delivering can keep delivering. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much. You have made a case, but before I hand over to George, I know, George, they might not have a presentation because they were invited late at this stage, so it might not take long. But can I just have confirmation that what you are saying is about besides the PTNG being wound down, but also what is your take about also the PTOG, because they are combining now the PTOG and the PTNG, which also will have an impact, for example, on the Golden Arrow buses. What I'm saying about the combination of these whilst they're winding down the PTNG. So you are fine with the PTOG that they are saying that they doing the combination before, so that when they respond, you also have got the clarity.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, for that question. I think just in the most simplest of terms, we support the reform in terms of budget reforms that are being proposed by the National Department of Transport to have a more operational heavy specific impetus or focus. What we are extremely concerned about is that we are still uncertain as to what this new hybrid of PTNG/PTOG is going to look like, what it's going to do for our existing services. Of course, there is the Golden Arrow question as well, which has largely been a provincially funded or subsidized or operational funding service, extending outside of Cape Town to a functional area, including Stellenbosch and surrounds and Paarl. So I do, to repeat, Chairperson, I'm very concerned that we don't know what that looks like. We cannot support something as yet when we have no idea what its full implications are going to mean for our services and most importantly for our commuters.
Okay, all right, thank you. I've got that. And we have any response from George? You have got a platform also to pour out all your heart and your tears. Over to George.
Thank you, Chairperson. And I think my colleague in the City of Cape Town has literally covered everything. We are in the same boat as George is performing in terms of that PTNG, in terms of our public transport. I would like now to just give over to our CFO, Rian du Plessis, just to highlight to this committee the uncertainty in terms of funding that we've also received earlier this year, and that we needed to pay that funding back as what it is in terms of operation causing for us. But we are literally in the same boat. I don't want to repeat anything that my colleague has said. I think he's have comprehensively covered all the detail that George is literally in the same boat with it. So I would like to hand over to Rian du Plessis, our CFO. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, committee members and colleagues. Yes, I don't think there's much we can add to what Councillor Quintas has said. It really covers it quite well. And I think the only aspect that I can highlight is the impact that it has on operational decision making from our side, where the legislation that covers our environment is laden with responsibility for us to make sure that funding is secured first before we commit to contractual obligations. And that's sort of the space that we are in, that I think the intent from everybody involved with the project from George's side certainly wants to make sure that the service is continued. But like the councillor has mentioned, that there's definitely understandable that the reformation or the reforms are necessary, and that it needs to change. But that space of uncertainty creates a very difficult environment for us currently, as we're trying to secure further rollouts of the bus service, and the contract with our current vehicle operating company is actually coming to an end by December this year. So we need to put new arrangements in place, and so we're a bit stuck that we need to put something temporary in place until the revision of the grant position is clarified further, and obviously that will take some time. National Treasury also needs to be allowed the necessary time to get around all the numbers and what it means from their perspective. But it does create a lot of uncertainty from our side. So I think we also basically just trying to navigate the space as best as we can. Yeah, I think what the MMC said is true, that where the bus service has been successful, and I know the team from our Department of Mobility in Western Cape have been instrumental in making sure that this bus service works in George. It would be quite sad to see that come to an end. It's actually punishing us for the sins of some of the others, if I can put it just bluntly. But it's not that bad quite. But just that I think sort of highlights the position that we are in. But we appreciate the opportunity to be part of the conversation, and we certainly hope and we take the commitment that National Treasury has given us, that all the work that has gone in the last 12 years in George's context to make the bus service work, and all the millions and millions has been spent on the infrastructure, that there will be some instrument coming forward to make sure that carries on, because it would be a tremendous loss, not just from the municipality's perspective, but from the public's perspective, because it really is a service that is vitally needed. And making sure that it's funded. Unfortunately, we are in that position where it's heavily reliant on grant and subsidies to make it work. But I think the team have proven that they are willing and that they are capable of making sure that it does work the way that it's supposed to work. So thanks very much, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to be part.
Thank you very much. Acting HOD Province, in summary, your response from the provincial side.
Thank you so much.
To the members to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. I do want to concur that the previous speakers have adequately covered us. We do want to say that from a national perspective, we understand the position that's been taken, and there are quite a bit of areas of congruence where we agree that reform is necessary. It's now about the how, and it's about the certainty in terms of all the operating cities, Chairperson. We want to make sure that collectively we co-create the way forward. We are concerned. We have got quite a bit of obligations and commitments, but I do think just looking at the national presentation that they hear us. So on winding down, I'm sure that the idea is to co-create the plan moving forward, because that's what I take out of the presentation. Sustainability, and I think Councillor Quint has touched on it. There is no city where the revenue or where the revenue exceeds the operational costs, and that's where subsidies do come in. We've largely tried to maneuver this difficult space with the minibus taxi industry in the Western Cape. It's not been an easy run, but we do have a good relationship with the minibus taxi industry. We understand their concerns, we understand National's concerns, but it's so important that the way forward is co-created and not necessarily just put on cities, and that there's an appreciation for the work that's been done, the planning that's been ongoing for the last 3 years. I hear where the City of Cape Town's at in terms of phase 2A. Similarly, in George, we've made commitments to finalize certain of our phases. There's been delays, but we've walked the road with the National Department of Transport. They are at our bilaterals. They are in some of the difficult conversations with the minibus taxi industry. But I'm confident that we can co-create the solution together, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, members. It's your turn. But member Heron, so far, yes, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all the presentations and input. I really want to start with at the beginning. We're talking about the winding down of a conditional grant. And I mean, a conditional grant is there to implement a strategy or a plan. And so I think, I don't know if we were left out of the beginning, and we're just talking about the grant, or whether there's been a change at National Department of Transport in terms of their public transport strategy and action plan that was adopted almost 2 decades ago. So, I mean, Ms. Manana and Mr. Sadat have been involved in this project for a very long time, and the PTNG is a funding source to implement a particular public transport plan and strategy. So I would have thought we should have started with, we want to change our public transport plan and strategy, and therefore the funding source needs to change. But we haven't heard what the plan and strategy is, because the PTNG has had various names over the last 20 years or 15 years, but it was essentially to implement integrated rapid public transport networks, and there was a heavy focus on BRT as the mode to be implemented. And so I think the question is, why are we starting with looking at the funding without receiving a presentation on what the national plan is for public transport networks and rapid public transport networks, as cities should be more densified as we move into the future? So is this language, PTNG being phased out, just a fig leaf for phasing out BRT. And BRT is a public transport strategy and plan that was adopted by national government 20 years ago. So where's the new plan for public transport in our cities? Then I want to say also, if I may, I think the part of the problem is right from the beginning that 9 cities, and I think it was even more than 9 cities when we started, is way too many. And the National Department of Transport must know, and has certainly heard this over and over again, that there are a handful, maybe not even a handful of cities in Cape Town, in South Africa, that could support a viable BRT or IPRTN program based on the size of the city, the population, the densities, the spatial layout. So it would have been better for me to hear from the National Department of Transport that they are cutting programs in places like Polokwane and Rustenburg, which will never have the residential densities, or not for a very long time, to support anything that's nearly viable as an IRPTN. So I think part of the problem is that there are too many cities that were being funded, and the funding was then spread very thin, which slows down the implementation of the infrastructure and the services. And maybe the department needs to look at how many cities are being funded and whether they are indeed viable and appropriate. I would like to suggest that the department also looks at a city's plan for its spatial development in determining the way forward, and identifies those cities that are committed and implementing spatial transformation measures that will address the viability of public transport and subsidized public transport and BRT systems, and link conditional grants to outcomes around spatial development, because the BRT can't simply be to move people from one place to the other without also densifying along some of those corridors. The complaint around the infrastructure over design, I want to also remind in National Department of Transport that this was the plan from the beginning. I mean, NDOT employed Lloyd Wright to come and advise on the plan, and he set out the gold standard for what should be the infrastructure design, the separated lanes, the median stations, and all of that. So the cities like Johannesburg and Cape Town that have implemented that gold standard, and were actually at some point they were even measured by the ITDP as to whether they achieved that gold standard. That standard was set by the National Department of Transport. And now you're coming and saying, actually, you've over-designed the system. But that was exactly the plan, as I understood it at the time. And I know that for phase 2 in Cape Town, there was a decision made, even my time there, to reduce the design of some of the stations because they were over-designed and expensive. Coming back to the public transport, the PTNG funding, and you put it up there, the commitments that are made, and I think it underscores my point I made earlier, that there are too many cities, and there's a strange proportionality of funding commitments or allocations. I mean, the fact that George is 50, 60, 70% of Cape Town's commitments is ridiculous. I mean, Cape Town is a much larger city with a much larger network, embarking on a second phase, which, as the MMC points out, will serve a much larger community. How can the funding proportionality be where George is almost half, and in some years, 60, 70% of Cape Town spend? And then we've still got funding there for Rustenburg and Ekurhuleni and eThekwini, which have never got these projects off the ground properly. I want to you asked the question, Chair, and I think it's an important question around the consolidation of PTOG and PTNG, because surely part of the plan for public transport is the devolution of PTOG and the Golden Arrow or contracted bus services, let's not label the operator, should be devolved to the cities, in the Western Cape's case, to the city of Cape Town, to be integrated into one public transport network. And I wonder if that's part of the plan. And then my question to the cities around the extent to which phase 1 is relying on PTNG for its operational expenses. I think that the city at one stage, and I think I saw it in the budget, has committed about 5 or 6% of rates income to public transport. And so I wanted to understand to what extent phase 1 is still being funded by PTNG. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I see this next one is Member Masipa, followed by Member Nash. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the National Transport's presentation and to the City of Cape Town. Chair, I'm going to start to where Honourable Nenzo left. But first, let me just say that I agree with Honourable Brett Heron in what he said, there. I'm just going to probably just add, Honourable Nenzo asked, why don't we focus on the Western Cape and City of Cape Town? So I think the acting HOD indicated that there are areas that they agree with the National Department, and I would have loved to hear which areas are those that they agree with the National Department in the rollout of this, what you call the public transport network grant reduction or withdrawal. And I think what's very important is that I think, Chair, we should have really had what is really not working from Western Cape point of view, because I think the presentation from national government is quite generic, and kind of, use all generic, it's not really specific in terms of what is not working, let's say in the City of Cape Town or George or other areas. So if we can hear, specifically what is that is really maybe, areas of concerns that they are raising here, that, obviously the cities are not really implementing the plans, and some areas are not, misalignment regarding the expenditure and the grant, poor planning and uneven implementation and uneven commitment to operationalize. If really, Chair, we can just ask the National Department to just really take us through, in terms of how they see the City of Cape Town and George, being affected in terms of those institutional challenges that they have raised in this presentation. Thank you, Chair.
And then Member Van Beek, and then we allow the National to respond.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me join those who have welcomed the presentation from the National Department of Transport, as well as responses from the affected two municipalities, City of Cape Town and George. Let me start with the response. You indicated that the development councillor Quintus, in Khayelitsha. I did look at the active slide, and please do forward the slide to us. Whether has that been completed or not? I know that there is a robust construction in Khayelitsha and other parts of the City of Cape Town. Look, I think Member Masipa partly covered me, because key challenges were outlined, by Ms. Manana. And yes, I appreciate that she moved from the general, and one was interested that she then land to the particular, meaning George and the City of Cape Town. Because one, she makes a point that municipalities continues missing the deadline as key challenge number one. Municipalities continues to have a challenge of mismanagement of funds, and as part of the reasons for the winding down of funds. Unfortunately, she could not locate the two municipalities. Whether are these two municipalities affected or not. What we see and know is what I can describe as aggressive, road infrastructure for integrated public transport, in the city of Cape Town as well as in the area of George. Notwithstanding the persistent inconsistencies in respect to how they are being rolled out. But the principle is there is a rollout of such a program, which I think Councillor Quintas did actually outline an overview. Now, finally, there is the N2 Express, Councillor Quintas, and that the only dedicated lane one is, according to observe, is the one from the townships, right, on the N2 to the city of Cape Town, and 0 from the city of Cape Town to the township, so that the workers who go to town, to industry to sell their labor, can also be not only quick to go and sell their labor, but can also be quick to go to where they live, so that they can be able to go to parents' evening and other community activities, right? Are there any possibilities or plans perhaps for the construction of such roads in this instance? Thank you very much. Otherwise, Member Masipa covered some of the issues and that is why I raised the point earlier to say, look, in as much as you are general, but try to contrast your presentation with, and locate the city of Cape Town and George, so that at least we can have a focused discussion and understand the impact of what we are here to present. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Van Wyk.
Thank you, Chair. And I think, thanks very much for the presentations. And, I certainly want to support Councillor Quintas in his explanation of what has taken place in the city of Cape Town. And I think, George has reaffirmed that. And, certainly from the provincial view, that has been supported too. Member Heron is totally correct in terms of a strategy that existed, a plan that has existed, and now what has happened to that strategy? What is the change now? Because suddenly, because there are failed systems and systems that failed to launch in other cities around the country, the ones that have worked and the ones who've diligently gone about the whole program and had discipline and applied everything, they are now being punished in terms of this sudden change that we have. Certainly when you are starting to put in an integrated public transport plan, a system that you are putting there, you need to be looking at which are the pilots and make sure that the pilots are able to work. And, certainly that has been the case, for instance, in George, as being an intermediate city. The whole idea was to make George the pilot and get that to work and understand what the complexities are in putting together such a transport plan. And make no mistake, it's a complex system to put together. And when one's putting together a system of that nature, of going to provide public transport, you also have to be implementing at the same time a whole plan, a very determined plan on what the economic development is going to be. Because ultimately, you need to get people using those buses, using that form of transport, who are able to pay for that. In other words, that is their method of access to the work that they are undertaking. And therefore, ideally, you want to see that the economy is working in those cities. And I think this is once again a failure of economic growth, of economic activity within the country, that we are now seeing the effect of this. So I believe what we need to be looking at And what the department needs to be telling us is what are they going to do with the ramifications of winding down these grants, because there are going to be widespread and deep ramifications as a result thereof. And therefore, what is the solution? How are we going to solve the funding needs, the ongoing funding needs that we need for the public transport systems that are working? And I think those are the big issues that we need to be tackling. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll ask the National to respond, but while that, just for the clarity, the Land Transport Act, which is now that the provinces are trying to implement, they talk more about also the integration of the land transport. At what extent that is being considered specifically, not only in one sector. Yes, we're talking about the PTNG, and you mentioned the minibus, but what about the others? The others, for example, the e-hailing, more specifically that the regulations on the e-hailing have also been up. So at what extent have you looked at that? And also at what extent, luckily for transport, also the rails also under them. At what extent have you looked at all of those? Also, there is a saying that the part of the reasons that there's this winding down of this is to accommodate the rail, passenger rail specifically. Now that actually it has been communicated that the private will be looking in terms of fixing the rail. And then lastly, you are trying to combine, I think it links up to what Member Helen was saying, the already formalized aspect, which is what the cities are busy doing when it comes to the bus. And now you will be introducing the minibus, which is no one is saying that you cannot be part of those, because we do know the importance of what they call the last mile for some of the mode of transport, because not all transporters can be able to take you straight home. But we do know that the minibus taxi industry is not as formalized. Yes, they are private, they are formalized in terms of their context from the way they come from, because I don't want to minimize what they are doing. But in the context that now you have, the cities we have got already formalized, we've got all the structures, whether they are functioning or not, because they are mostly the government. And then now you are adding a structure that hasn't been formalized. At what extent that you are helping them so that when now you do the whole implementation of the land transport, this at least becomes like that, instead of just creating unnecessary tensions. More specifically, that you are saying that when you combine the PTOP and the PTNG, it means that also the minibus is going to be part of it. And then lastly, with the commuter buses, in our case, for example, the gaps, I do know that in the other areas, you've got also others. At what extent also that you would have also engaged with them in regard to at the end that the cities, in order to have one integrated transport that is running by the city, it means that everything, we need to let go of everything so they could be able to manage as we copy and paste in what is happening in the big cities, whether it's in London, whether it is it's in Belgium and all of those. So at what extent that you have also engaged around that? So thank you very much. Over to you. There was a hand from Councillor Quintas, but I wanted the transport to respond first. So I'm not sure.
Chairperson, I wanted to just respond to the question posed at me by the Honourable Betsu.
Yeah, but it's sorry. Thank you, but it's because we wanted to start from the beginning, and then once the transport at the national response. And then I'll ask now from your side and the George if they got anything to respond to. let's start with the national to respond, because they will have written all the questions. Thank you. Ms. Manana,
Thank you, Chair. And also thank you for the questions and comments. I think it's important that we clarify that the focus of this presentation was on the PTNG, particularly the winding down process of the PTNG. And maybe let me deal first with some of the issues that have been raised there. I'd like to borrow the words from Ms. Rabonar, where she said we must collectively co-create the process, whether it be for winding down as well as for the development of the new plan. And that is exactly what the intention is. When we called provinces and municipalities at a national workshop, it was largely to share with them the thinking around the winding down process, and also to share with them the thinking around the new proposed plan as well as the new fund. And they were then given an opportunity to inform and influence and suggest. I know the minister has spoken with some of the mayors, and she said to them, submit to the Department of Transport what you think should be in the new plan, what you think should be in the new fund, or how the new fund should be constituted. So both provinces as well as municipalities are being given that opportunity to make an input. And so currently we have received those inputs, and we will be going through them to see how then we incorporate them in the new documents that we are developing. And this will be followed by a process to then engage further and consult with them further on what then will be the new public transport reforms for the country. And this process is effectively reviewing the public transport strategy. It's looking at the National Land Transport Act. It's saying what is working in the Act, what is not working. What do we still want to keep from the strategy? What do we want to, whatever that has not worked, why has it not worked? What can we do differently? So all those questions are being considered as part of this new public transport plan, as well as the fund. The department is even going through a theory of change process to make sure that we are able to fully understand why things have not worked, and therefore what then must we do differently going forward with regard to public transport, and come up with new public transport reforms. So we're not doing this in isolation. I think it's important that we highlight that, and we're not doing this alone. I think in the second last slide, I indicated that for now we're engaging within government, and that we will then be going into engaging with the industry when we are ready, when we know that we have something that we can all own and collectively support when we go and engage with the industry. And then coming to the winding down process. So we will be providing, and I think we've already started to share some of the winding down principles with municipalities. So when you engage with them during the 22nd to the 24th, we will share with them the winding down principles that we have jointly developed with National Treasury, that we, will guide the winding down process. And the winding down plan is not developed by National. It has to be a plan that cities, together with us, we will work towards and make sure that then as National and Treasury, we approve to guide the winding down processes in municipalities. It's also important that we indicate that within the grant framework, the conditions clarify what is going to happen within this winding down process. The minister, at the portfolio committee even indicated that whatever is working, we're not going to throw away things that are working. We are mindful that there are services that are currently, under operation. We are mindful that there is infrastructure that is currently being built. And therefore, we are not going to be irresponsible and then just say, stop. Yes, while we do recognize that some of the municipalities will be impacted because there are cuts, and that happens generally with cuts, so I think it is something that in our winding down process, we indicated that we are going to be engaging. So it's not going to be a blanket approach. It will be a city to city, engagement to fully understand what is happening in that city, and therefore come up with a winding plan, and also see how then those contractual obligations that the city has and whatever commitments they have, we see how then those are met or honored. Yes, I was looking for the right word, honored. So I think it's important that we highlight that. Yes, we may not have all the answers now. And I think that's why this is still a process. We are engaging with municipalities on both the winding down process to fully understand what's going on in those cities. And also we're engaging with cities and provinces on the new plan that will then guide the public transport reforms that we want to bring in, as well as then the new grant that will then, implement the new plan that we are currently developing. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave it at that. I think, I'll leave it at my response and submit them as I have done. Thank you, Chair.
There were quite of them specific. So are you suggesting that some of them you would be able, where it's possible, maybe just to submit in writing the specifics that they ask for?
Chair, some of the specifics we may not have answers, and I think that's why we are indicating that, for example, with the new plan, I think I've responded to that we are developing a new plan. Rail is going to be part of that backbone. So there is a plan, and I think City of Cape Town is aware of that plan. Province is aware of that plan. And in terms of content, in terms of where we're going, when it comes to specific issues, let me think now. They are part of the winding down process. I mean, if you look at the presentation, as I said, it highlights, it covers everything, most of the things that, especially it's related to concerns that are being raised around honoring commitments, around whether services are going to be disrupted. In the presentation, it is clear there are principles that are going to be guiding this process and objectives. And those, it's almost like it's a commitment by National Department of Transport that these things are going to guide the winding down process, Chair, as well as the new reforms. Thank you.
Yes, no, sorry to disturb you. I don't want to be a dialogue with the members. They can be able also to ask for further clarity. But the point that I'm trying to make as the committee, the reason that we brought you here, it's about not only coming from these two municipalities, but even generally from the members of the public. When they hear that some of the projects that these municipalities are already busy with, it might ended up not actually being expanded because of the decrease or potential decrease of the funding that will come from the national, as these were projects that were supported by the national. So that's why the city was doing their presentation in terms of where they are, and then they said it themselves that in terms of that, it's still unclear. So they've got fears. You are right when you say it's still a plan. So there's still discussions. So that's why they are saying that they still have got fears of the unknown, because nobody knows exactly in terms of how it's going to be. But when you did the presentation in terms of during the medium term, you can see in regard to that in terms of how the funding would be in the next outer years, that actually it won't be much, there will be a decrease. And then lastly, it's about the members that they are raising in regard to why is it that where there is things our government are working, or there is a progress vis-a-vis in regard to the other municipalities or other cities where probably they don't even have to be part of this process, so that you could be able to fund in those kind of areas. But nevertheless, I'm giving the members the last bite so that you could be able maybe to give some highlight. Let's give it to firstly to Councillor Quintus, and then Member Masipa, and then Member Harold. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm just trying to lower my hand to make life easier for everyone. Chair, so thank you for the opportunity. And through you, firstly, just to respond to the honourable member who raised the outbound travel times for public transport and the people that are heading out of the city at the end of a long day of work. So on just two things I'd like to raise, Chairperson, which I'm sure the provincial committee is aware of, is that already last year we piloted and have now adopted a reversible lane system with My City. This is in effect on the Atlantis route, the outbound. So in the evening rush hour after after work commute, there is a signalling system that allows for the rapid bus transport to go onto those lanes out of mixed traffic and then head back in that direction on a speedy dedicated lane. So that'll obviously be considered with our phase 2A as well rollout to ensure that people have the maximum benefit of those lanes both in and outbound. And then furthermore, we are currently in a design phase for a outbound lane from the city for high occupancy vehicles on the N2. As you know, Chairperson, the N2 offers a dedicated lane during peak morning for high occupancy vehicles such as minibus taxis and buses. We're looking at it currently for the minibus taxi outbound. We need to do some very detailed work and potentially major amendments to be able to take bigger vehicles like buses on an outbound evening peak, but certainly to allow for the minibus taxis is what we're looking at currently, to have the benefit of being able to leave the city on a dedicated rapid lane as they enjoy it in the morning coming in. And this is being done in consultation with the Western Cape government, because you will know, Chairperson, that the city's remit in terms of the N2 begins and ends at the Black River turnoff. So a fair amount of the program of work of travel is actually on Western Cape Government Road Reserve, but we are working very closely with the department, and we will be looking at implementing this in the new financial year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Masipa, Member Harold, Member Monfu.
Chair, really, I'm worried about the answers we are getting. Obviously, we asked the department to come and really account to us so that we will be also able to really talk to our residents in Cape Town or in the Western Cape, let me say it that way. Because the opening remarks are really very worried, because really worrying, because, if I'm a news reporter, I will really be, my news headline will really be saying that, there's limited effect on outcomes in terms of the implementation of this grant funding that is being provided to the cities. Funds are wasted, and then the Department of National Transport is going to end this, and it's not going to be good news, and we'll have still to answer. Chair, what I'm trying to say is that we haven't really gotten the answers that we are looking for in terms of going forward. Where are we going with regards to this, statements that are being made here? Is that are we going to bring an end to this transport or the grant funding? The province indicated that there are areas that they agree. Maybe, if we can hear where the province is agreeing with national government in terms of going forward and cutting the funding. So if the province can come in and just help us, and so that we are able to also reassure our commuters that they will still get, be having the public transport supported by national government. Thank you, Chair.
Member Harold?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me, Chair?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to say, I also feel like the questions haven't been answered. I asked about whether the process shouldn't have started with a plan, and then that there is a plan and the city and the province are aware of it. But we also heard that the plan needs to still be co-created. So I still don't understand how you decide to phase out a conditional grant, without first having a new public transport plan for the whole country and where BRT fits into that. So is there a new plan for public transport and the different modes? And why wasn't that the starting point of the presentation, if there is one? Secondly, is BRT part of the future plan for public transport networks in some cities in South Africa? And then the third question that I really want to ask answered is what is envisaged for the integration of the existing BRT systems and contracted bus services? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last one, Member Nancy.
Thank you very much. The national department, I think we did indicate that we appreciate that the fact that the presentation was served before the NA's portfolio committee for transport, right? And now you were invited to appear before the Western Cape Standing Committee for Mobility / Transport. And there are two municipalities which are beneficiaries of your grant. And now, and a question which in fact I share with those who say you did not respond to us, yet you are here and you make the presentation and this is public. And part of your key challenges is mismanagement of funds by municipalities. And that statement is being made in our standing committee in the Western Cape, where George and the city of Cape Town are beneficiaries. Two, the inability to meet deadlines. Do you suggest that the city of Cape Town and George are part of those municipalities or not? It's a simple yes or no question. If you are unable to respond to us, I would like provincial government, maybe, I think not today, Councillor Quintus, to confirm whether his municipality is part of mismanagement of listed or flagged or not meeting the deadline and also mismanagement of funds. And I think also the mayor of George should also assist here. What do they understand about these key challenges? Maybe I should put that question differently. Because where I am seated, the National Department seems not to be ready to present the provincial forecast presentation than a general presentation. We accept the overview, but want the local presentation or perspective in respect to the implication of this, and whether indeed those two municipalities are affected or implicated or not implicated. That's the basic. If they are saying they can, all of them, then what was the point to appear before us? And also, Member Harold asked a strategic question And also, there was zero response to his question. So why are we here? Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think the whole thing, Ms. Manana, is about now the municipals is here. Just again to reiterate what the last man has just said. Is there anything reason related? Because when it comes to the conditional grants, there are conditions. The conditions is about to use the money and also use it effectively, and then you have the outputs, and then also on the outcomes. Besides the withdrawal or the decrease, is there any within the conditions that were set up by the national for this grant for these two municipalities that you think that probably they would have breached in regard to that, to this, so that we could be able to see in terms of how we can be able to assist the committee going forward. And then lastly, I do understand as the acting DDG, we may not necessarily be able to answer policy questions because they are more of political policy questions. For example, everyone knows that it starts with a strategy and then the structure, and then in terms of the actions related to the monies, which is the question from Member Harold. So in terms of now, all of a sudden, this being changed, because I read again the medium term budget, also policy statements in regard to the transport and all of those. So whilst we may not be able to answer some of the questions, why now jiggy in terms of the policy wise, but at least for the strategy in regard to what was the strategy that could have influenced you to shift the resources this way, or to change the terms of the conditions of the grant that you are, was a conditional grant, there are conditions. The conditions are being changed. Now that's why I want to use the money resources this way. But the question is about what is this strategy that will have influenced the conditions. I think that is the last one. But before you respond, is there anything from the province again? Because Ms. Manana will be the last one to respond. Is there anything from the province? Yes, Ma'am, Ms. D.
Thank you, Chairperson. Through you to Member Masipa, he asked a very important question about what are the areas where province agrees with national. And it's fairly simple, Member Masipa. It's about the fact that there's been a lot of fragmentation in terms of grants. So you've got PTNG at a local government level, you've got PTOG at a provincial level, you have the rail subsidy at a national level. So we do agree with the grant reform and trying to vest that at the appropriate sphere of government. So that is an area that we do agree. We agree that in terms of implementation, there has been slow pace in certain cities. And in the Western Cape, from a George and City of Cape Town perspective, we've been very good about expressing the reasons for that. From a capacity perspective, I do have to remind everybody that there was a freezing of recruitment about a few years ago that's held up certain institutional capacity issues. We agree that there are some cities that's gone and implemented infrastructure without having any operation. So there's a need for reform and for accountability on that. I'm not saying that, I mean, City of Cape Town and George is operational cities. In George, we are close to 70% of implementation in the geographical area. The City of Cape Town is very close to implementing phase 2A, which takes them to a large implementation footprint of the metro. So those are the things, Member Masipa, that we agree with in terms of the question you posed. Thank you, Chairperson. That's it from our side.
Thank you, Councillor Findus. And then over to National.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Just briefly to answer the question posed to the City of Cape Town by the Honourable Member Ntentsu. Chairperson, so the question was, is Cape Town one of the cities that has had either financial misconduct or is financially not performing or not performing according to deadlines and milestones? The answer to that question is no. Cape Town is not one of those cities. We are at as near to completion in terms of the overall program as phase 2A as can be. All of our contracts are currently signed. Mega construction in many instances is approaching 70% completion, and well within our timelines. We submit everything that is required on time to the National Department of Transport for then monitoring at all stages. And any delays that we've experienced overall in terms of any of our major programs are minor delays. These are largely as a result of either work stoppages due to subcontractor disputes with contractors, or potentially due to attempts at extortion by the construction mafia. But overall, we are on target and on program for the delivery of a more than 7 billion rand investment project into public transport in the City of Cape Town. And we are very proud of that. And with using a very familiar expression of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I do agree with all these speakers that have spoken that that is certainly not something we want to see in the Cape Town instance, and I believe with George as well, that those that are functioning and are delivering and are doing so in a clean manner are not penalised where those problems may exist elsewhere in the country. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. So as for the record, please, George, do you also want to confirm that you will try to, in terms of the question that was raised?
Afternoon, Speaker. Unfortunately, our mate's apologies. His device ran out of battery power, so he had to step out. So just to note that. Yeah, I think the sentiment is more or less the same from our perspective as well. And I think there's not much I can add from that. But I think the way forward is basically we are most interested in, because we are in a peculiar space in terms of our contractual arrangements with our operating company, and it's something where, if you look at it from a wide perspective, to continue as is requires potentially a level of grant funding that might not be ideal, considering the challenges that we've highlighted so far during the discussion. The alternative being no service, which is obviously not what we want, and then trying to look for some alternative down the middle, where we can do a more affordable version maybe. So that's sort of where our mindset is currently, is just to see what is potentially possible from the co-creation kind of conversation that Mr. Arabanar was speaking as well. What can we put together going forward to make sure that what we have established and what is actually working can continue to work for the people of George. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Manana, for the last one.
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry.
The rep
Yes.
from George could not answer the question as to whether the George municipality, right, is implicated to the key, which are the key challenges which I mentioned that the George municipality is implicated. For instance, I flagged mismanagement of funds, the inability to meet deadlines, for instance, as one of the issues raised by Ms. Manana, but is unable, maybe now she will, but she was unable to respond to them whether these local municipalities, George and City of Cape Town, are implicated. But Councillor Quintas was very explicit, no, City of Cape Town is not. What about George municipality? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. You want to respond, Mr. Duplessis?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I don't think there's any challenges that's common, if I can refer to that, or similar to the general discussion that we started off with. The only challenges we've had is similar to what Cape Town has highlighted, normal stuff that you have with your contractors, normal delays and challenges dealing with the taxi industry in terms of negotiations and rolling out routes and so on and so on. But there hasn't been particular issues that we can put a broad brush to say this is similar to other issues that we have discussed so far. One particular issue that we had was with the multi-year window that some of the capital projects had or have, where it takes more than one financial year. And because of the difference in accounting basis between local municipalities and departments, one being on historical cost basis or GRAP, other one, the departments being on the modified cash basis, that creates difficult conversations when it comes to year ends and rollovers, where in general rollover conversations are seen as a bad thing, where money has not been expensed by a certain date. But that's not necessarily reflective on progress in terms of projects. So those have been issues that we've worked out. But in terms of actual on-the-ground challenges warranting the stopping of a grant due to not doing what you're supposed to do, I don't think there's anything in that part of the scope for us to unpack. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Acting HOD, we just have a hand.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just to come in and just to support the CFO of George, because we are co-funders to this, I can confidently say that there's no mismanagement that's been found in terms of the grant, that any delays in terms of implementation has been well ventilated with the National Department of Transport. It's our bilateral. So just to answer the question to the members that posed it, no mismanagement found in the grant.
Thank you very much. Ms. Manana, your closing remarks. We don't have much time now. Your closing remarks.
Thank you, Chair. I think, Chair, it's important that maybe we shouldn't live with this uncertainty. So, yes, in the winding down process, the process is 3 years. But from year 20, I think it's 29-30, there will be a new public transport grant or fund that will be developed. Whether we are still going to keep the name as a public transport network grant or not, in our discussions with Treasury, we've highlighted that, look, if the name is still relevant, we'll keep it. So it's not that in the winding down that come year 4, there won't be any funding. There will be funding. And I think what is important is that's why in the winding down process presentation, we are showing step-by-step process that will be engaged with municipalities per city to fully understand, their contracts, to understand where their services are. I mean, if they have, for example, George is supposed to be going into, a stage 2 contract. So all those matters are taken into consideration. They will be taken into consideration in our discussions because we are mindful that we do not want to come up with unintended consequences. I mean, if the people of George must continue to have a service, that service must continue. It cannot just end. So I think those matters will be discussed in our engagements with them. And we're starting those engagements, as we said, on the 22nd per city, because we recognize that each city has got, its own peculiar conditions. And I think, as you also said, Chair, there is a new plan that is under development. There was a draft plan that was presented to municipalities and provinces that is basically reviewing the public transport strategy. And I think decisions around which cities can be suspended or taken out, those are matters that I cannot, confirm because it's not upon me to decide city A will come in or city B will be taken out. And then those are matters that are to a large extent in the political domain. So I think the discussions are ongoing, and if we and even the new plan will look at, and even in the integration, we are looking at existing bus services as well as your PTOC services to see how we integrate them, and when that integration should happen within this winding down process, as well as transitioning into the new grant. So all the issues that are occupying members, they are, I mean, we are mindful of them. And I think, as we said at the beginning, that we have to manage this in a very responsible and accountable manner. And if we need to come back when we are ready with the new plan to the portfolio, not to the portfolio committee, to the standing committee, we can do that. When the plan is ready to then be presented, we can come back and do that so that we can take you into our confidence for you to then see that there is a new plan that is under development, as well as a new grant that is currently being underdeveloped. Thank you. Or under development, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming again on a Friday afternoon. I'm sorry that we are 4 minutes past 4, but we want to thank you, the National Department, the city, the province, and also George. What's going to happen now, the members will remain just to summarize the resolutions, but we will welcome the city and also from George. They can send, if any, that probably want us to add in our committee report in regard to the resolution, the recommendation, they can send to Ms. Adams, Zahida, so that we could be able to add. But thank you once more, and you can leave. All the best. And the committee members can please remain. I don't even want to say let's take a break because there's not much time.
Thank you, Chairperson,
Friday.
and thank you, colleagues. Goodbye.
Please do send, and if you have got any ideas of the resolution, you can just email Zahida around that. But thank you very much. Committees, it's only us. Any resolution from our side? Member Masipa?
Yeah, Chair, thank you very much for this meeting that you arranged. I think it's important that we also invite the National Department maybe to share with us the details in terms of their new plan that they are obviously going to develop. I don't think it's going to be soon, but I think it's a resolution that we can take into account for next year. Yeah, that's it from my side.
Yeah, thank you. The new plan, Member Basels and Member.
Chair, no thanks. I was covered by Member Masipa with regards to the plan. And Chair, I think it's also important that maybe even if it's only you as the chairperson, get an invite to the deliberations with the 2 Western Cape cities when the National Transport, when the National Department speaks to the 2 municipalities separately. I think it's also important that we know the details that is being discussed there. Thanks.
Thank you. We've got that, Ms. Jones. Member Manzo?
Yes, Chair, I do have.
Yeah, thank you. Member Manzo?
Thank you very much, Prof. Mine will, given...
Come closer. You sound far now. Closer to the mic.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Given the big nature of the response, or the inability of the presentation to zoom specific to the 2 municipalities, I would like to ask that we write to the department, right, to respond in writing, on the key challenges which they highlighted, the extent with which our 2 municipalities are implicated or affected. Because the report was too generalized was not assisting at all, though it was an important conversation to have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there any other resolution? No. You capture all of those, Ms. Jones?
I have it as down as said, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. I think we have covered this part now. We quickly do the last one. Am I correct? The minutes of the 19th?
Correct. I'll just flight it, Chair.
Yeah. Just a reminder, the minutes, that meeting was about the road safety ambassadors. Oh, okay. And then the recommendation was about the municipality must explore municipal structures and municipal databases in respect of the recruitment, because they indicated there was a challenge in recruitment. And the second part was about that the department must also engage with the law enforcement, the South African police services and community safety, because of they did indicate that they were in other areas where they have to pause because where they were deployed because there was an extortion. Can we have a proposal in the seconder? If we're satisfied with the minutes.
Derek Wessels will propose.
Thank you. Second. Thank you, Member Menzu. Yeah. Okay. I think Menzu already. Yeah. Thank you. Is there anything else? From my side?
No, Chair, nothing that I'm aware of.
But thank you again, Member Jones, for here on behalf of Ms. Adams, and thank you, members, for this meeting on a Friday afternoon. All the best, long weekend. We'll see each other some other time. Bye.
Have a good weekend. Goodbye.
Bye, Chair.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Hello. Hello.
Okay, how are you?
Good, and you?